All right, so big story today running in the New York Post. It's not a news story, but it's an important one. China buying up giant swaths of farmland. Just happens to be, coincidentally, I'm sure, next to many of our key military bases all across the country. All right? So the question is, how did this happen and how to stop? And joining us now, we welcome back North Dakota Governor and Trump campaign surrogate, Mr. Doug Burgum. Governor, welcome. Grand Forks, North Dakota is right spot on this map. You've done something about it, but I just want to add, before you do, you know, when I was in the government, we had an issue with Huawei, the Chinese phone company, that was building these old-fashioned wooden telephone poles, right? And they just happened to be building them near our bases with tiny miniature cameras to do spying. Now, is there something like that going on today with this farmland story?
Well, I can't speak for the rest of the country because not everybody's been as successful as North Dakota has in blocking this from happening. But of course, we're a state where we've had for over 100 years on the books anti-corporate farming laws. If you and I decided we both wanted to retire and farm in North Dakota and buy a piece of farmland and farm, we wouldn't be able to do that because we're not related to each other. You have to be a family member to actually own and farm in our state. So no U.S. corporation can own farmland there, no foreign corporation, and no foreign political party. That's always been clear. We strengthen it with our legislature.
So even today, there's no Chinese. We thought we saw a red dot on this map.
Well, there is
of Chinese farmland.
There was, because that was a little misrepresentation. But they did buy some land in an industrial park inside the city limits of Grand Forks. But we were successful in blocking that. Our two senators, who you know well, Senator Hover, Senator Kramer, they were all on top of it. We had great local leadership that was making very cautiously going forward, making sure that there was no outlays. They actually got paid $2.5 million, from this company that was interested in moving in there, that they were able to kept. But the reason they were able, the thing that were the real failure here is with the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., CFIUS. The local team calls the CFIUS and says, can you do a review if these guys want to build a corn milling plant in our state, which would help the farmers? Is that going to be blocked by CFIUS? And CFIUS came back and said no. And so part of this goes up to the Biden administration, goes back to what are the laws? You guys blocked the stuff with it you were doing with on the telephone poles, got it done. But this administration,
we threw Huawei out.
This administration said no problem, but it was only with our two senators working with the Air Force and got a letter from the Air Force, blocked it and stopped it. Some states might still be encouraging. I know I was in Michigan yesterday. They're encouraging China to come in and build a battery plant and giving them incentives, but states like North Dakota. But we need a national policy. And this is why we've got to have President Trump back in the office. President Trump, who's strong, he's the first one that understood that China was an issue. You were part of that administration. We were tough on China. And I think about, what he's done, whether it's tariffs or whether it's standing up to China on the border and on fentanyl. I mean, all of this just screams that we've got to have President Trump back in the office. I mean, can you imagine Joe Biden trying to solve this problem?
People got to take a look at that map. Maybe we can put it back up on the full screen. It's a really important map because you've got the China farmland purchases scattered across the country and with a very high correlation with our military bases. And some of these bases are nuclear-related military bases as well. So we'll keep that on the hot warmer. The other thing is a very interesting story. McKinsey and Company did a survey. Roughly half of Americans, roughly half of people who own electric vehicles, I want to get this right, half of those who own electric vehicles want to get rid of them and buy gas-powered vehicles, okay? What do you make of that? Because the Bidens want everybody to have EVs in 10 years or whatever. Here, 46% want to switch to gas cars. So the EV experiment didn't work. Now, you're from an oil-producing state, fossil fuel state. What do you make of this?
Well, I thought you were going, there's another study that came out recently that about half of the EV vehicles that had been purchased were purchased in counties in America that were predominantly blue counties. I mean, I think there were people were buying them because they were afraid to go to a cocktail party and said they didn't have an EV. But
that could be part of the same story.
That was but we know that they don't work, and I think it's just very simple. If you believe in liquid fuels, you're on Team USA. If you believe in the whole EV, then you're on Team China, because you can't have an EV car industry in this country without buying batteries from China. They control 85% of the rare earth minerals. We fought for 40 years to get out from underneath OPEC. And the climate extremists who are driving policy in Biden's administration are saying, hey, let's just become dependent for our transportation future on China. And it's a ridiculous thought, particularly when it's bad for our economy because it's driving inflation. I mean, all these subsidies that they have, the subsidies for EV cars, if you total them all up, it's over $900 a ton of CO2 that's deferred in North Dakota. We've got carbon-free ethanol for $85 a ton. We've got carbon-free oil and gas and a net negative barrel of oil for $60 a ton. So if you want a zero carbon fuel, we're doing it for 10 to 15 times more efficiently with innovation than what Biden is getting it done with regulation. And this is what Donald Trump understands. He cut so much regulation. Innovation has always been at the heart of American greatness.
But they've allocated $8 billion. They're supposed to build 500,000 chargers, okay?
Yes,
electric chargers.
half a bit, yeah.
They've built 7. This is after 2.5 years. So we had a story in the last segment. I mean, the Bidens can't even spend their overspending.
Right.
They can't even do their overregulation properly. That's how bad they are. I got a good Trump quote on liquid gold. He can't leave you without liquid gold quote. Let's roll the tape on Trump, please.
We have more liquid gold under our feet. I use the term. We have more oil. We have more wells. We have more everything than anybody else. When I started, we were number 3. Now we're number 1. We were number 1. He's going to keep it that way until after the election. If they ever won the election, there's no more oil coming out. There's no more oil. They were going down. Oil is what caused the inflation. You'd have nothing coming out. It would be a disaster.
And I just want to add to that, not only the inflation, and not only the issue people don't want to jam down their throats these electric vehicles that they don't like, but we had your colleague, Senator Kevin Cramer on last night. The Biden's political management of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, they've knocked out about 1/3, almost 40% of it, which we will desperately need in the case of a war with China or Russia, for example, okay? That has really compromised our entire military security. I mean, it's become a national security issue, and they're talking about another sale of Strategic Petroleum Reserve to knock gasoline prices down a couple of pennies before the election, and again, jeopardize our security.
Well, Biden's turned it from the Strategic National Petroleum Reserve into the Biden Personal Political Petroleum Reserve for political purposes only. The big drawdown was before the midterms. They did it explicitly to get the price down at the pump. China's building up their petroleum reserve. We're draining ours. But on the EV thing, the other thing, Larry, which is just impossibly bad policy, is we're running out of electricity in this country. And we're going to have a grid crisis. We did a study in North Dakota that was released about 3 weeks ago. North Dakota produces electricity that goes west into the SPP grid, east into the MISO grid. Dozens of states depend on our exports of electricity. And the Biden administration is prematurely shutting down all kinds of baseload at the same time. They're driving, everyone's got to have an EV gas stove. You had it up on the slide, 28% increase in electricity. It's one of the things every American, anybody who's watching your program needs electricity. They need air conditioning at home. And guess what? In the summer of 2025, if we don't reverse what Biden's doing, we're going to have Biden brownouts and Biden blackouts rolling across our country because the grid is becoming destabilized by their policies. And at the same time, we need more power than ever before to run our AI. The AI arms race with China, we could lose because of Biden's electric grids. And China's opening up a coal plant every 2 weeks to help them win the AI arms race.
How about some Friday follies, Governor? Katie Pavlich, you just met her?
Yes.
You know, she's smart. She says you look like George Washington. You look just like George Washington. Focus in on him. I don't know if we have a handy picture of George Washington, she claimed. Katie's a very smart woman. And my only question is, how long have you looked like George Washington?
Apparently about 10 seconds. This is news to me on that.
Right, Governor Doug Burgum.
Thank you, Larry.
Ever so much, sir.